Zethkar clicked his mandibles together as he watched the human delegation enter the Great Hall. The sound echoed off the crystal walls of the Velthari Command Center. After 30 years of military service, he had seen many species come and go. These humans looked no different from the others who came seeking alliance. The lead human was a female with short brown hair. She wore a simple blue uniform, without the bright colors or intimidating spikes that most warrior races preferred. Behind her walked 5 others, all looking calm and relaxed. They carried no visible weapons. Their skin was soft and pink, without scales or chitin armor. Zethkar noticed they were smaller than most species he had worked with. "Welcome to the Velthari Military Command," General Vexthor said, his deep voice rumbling through the hall. "We appreciate your offer to help in this difficult time." The human female stepped forward and bowed slightly. "I am Admiral Sarah Chen of the Human Defense Force. We are honored to stand with you against the hegemony threat." Zethkar studied her face. Humans had strange expressions that were hard to read. She seemed confident, but not aggressive. Her voice was steady, but not loud. Everything about her seemed ordinary. The war briefing began immediately. The hegemony had taken 3 star systems in the past month. Their forces were strong and well-armed. They showed no mercy to civilian populations. Traditional military tactics had failed against them. Admiral Chen listened without interrupting. She asked few questions, mostly about supply lines and communication networks. Her questions seemed simple, almost basic. Zethkar wondered if humans understood modern warfare at all. "Our fleet is small," Admiral Chen said, when asked about human capabilities. "We have 60 ships and about 10,000 soldiers. Our weapons are standard, energy-based systems. Nothing special." General Vexthor's eye stalks drooped slightly. 60 ships would barely make a difference. The Velthari alone had over 300 vessels, and they were still losing ground. "However," the admiral continued, "we specialize in information warfare and tactical support. We can provide intelligence gathering and strategic planning assistance." Zethkar almost laughed. Information warfare? The Velthari had quantum computers and crystal matrix data systems. What could these soft creatures possibly teach them about information? After the meeting, Zethkar was assigned as the human liaison officer. It was clearly a minor position. The general probably wanted to keep the humans busy, without giving them anything important to do. The human ships arrived 2 days later. Zethkar met Admiral Chen at the docking bay. The human vessels were gray and blocky, with no decorative elements. They looked functional, but not impressive. The soldiers who came out were young and quiet. They set up their equipment quickly and efficiently. "Where would you like us to begin?" Admiral Chen asked. "Start by reviewing our tactical databases," Zethkar said. "Learn about hegemony weapons and ship designs. We can provide you with battle recordings from the last 6 months." "Thank you," she said. "That will be very helpful." The humans worked for 3 days straight. They barely stopped to eat or sleep. Zethkar checked on them regularly. They had set up dozens of small computers and were analyzing everything. Not just military data, but also civilian communications, trade records, and cultural information. "Why are you studying their art?" Zethkar asked one of the human technicians. The young man looked up from his screen. "Art tells you how a species thinks. Their fears, their values, what makes them feel safe or threatened." Zethkar was puzzled. "What does that have to do with fighting them?" "Everything," the human said simply, then returned to his work. On the 4th day, Admiral Chen requested a meeting with the command staff. She had prepared a detailed presentation about hegemony forces, but it was unlike any military briefing Zethkar had ever seen. "The hegemony military structure is built around family loyalty," she began. "Soldiers serve with their genetic relatives. Their commanders are chosen based on bloodline, not ability." She showed diagrams of hegemony ships, Their weapons are powerful, but inflexible. They cannot easily change targets or adjust energy levels during battle. Their shields are strong in the front but weak on the sides. This was all information the Velthari already knew. But then Admiral Chen continued. More importantly, hegemony culture values individual glory above group success. Their soldiers compete with each other for recognition. Their communication systems are designed to broadcast achievements, which makes them vulnerable to interception. She clicked to another slide. They have a 3-day mourning period for fallen warriors during which military operations completely stop. Their fleet formations are based on ancient ceremonial patterns that limit their tactical options. Zethkar leaned forward. This was information they had never considered important. How did you learn all of this? General Vex Thor asked. Admiral Chen smiled. Asked them? We sent cultural exchange teams to hegemony worlds 2 years ago. We shared our music, our food, our entertainment. In return, they told us about their traditions, their values, their way of life. They were quite open about it. The room fell silent. The humans had been preparing for this war for 2 years, but there had been no war 2 years ago. The conflict had only started 4 months ago. We like to be prepared, Admiral Chen said quietly. That night, Zethkar could not sleep. He kept thinking about the human briefing. They had learned more about their enemies in 2 years of peace than the Velthari had learned in 6 months of war. Maybe these soft, quiet humans were not as ordinary as they seemed. The first joint mission came 1 week later. The hegemony had established a supply base on Kepler 442b, a rocky planet with 3 moons. Intelligence reports showed heavy fortifications and at least 2,000 enemy soldiers. Zethkar expected the usual plan. Orbital bombardment, followed by ground assault. The Velthari had tried this approach many times. Sometimes it worked, but always with heavy losses. Admiral Chen had different ideas. We will not attack the base, she said during the strategy meeting. General Vex's Thor's eye stalks twitched in confusion. Then how do we take it? We make them leave. The human plan seemed overly complicated. First, they would map all enemy patrol routes and shift changes. Then they would study the base's power systems and communication networks. Only after 2 weeks of observation would they take any action. Zethkar thought this was a waste of time. Why not just attack now while we have the advantage? What advantage? Admiral Chen asked. We have more ships. We have better weapons. Do we? She pulled up tactical displays. They have defensive positions. They know the terrain. They have nowhere to retreat, which makes them desperate. These are not advantages for us. The human observation teams were unlike anything Zethkar had seen. They used tiny drones that looked like local insects. They intercepted communications without the enemy knowing. They even studied the base's garbage disposal to learn about meal times and food supplies. After 10 days, the humans knew everything. They knew that the enemy commander, Warlord Krax, took personal calls from his mate every evening at 1,900 hours. They knew that the night shift guards played gambling games instead of watching their sensors. They knew that the base's power generator had a backup system that would fail after exactly 4 hours and 12 minutes. How did you learn that about the generator? Zethkar asked. Human technician Rodriguez looked up from his computer. What manual? The instruction manual for that model generator. We downloaded it from the manufacturer's database. Zethkar was speechless. The humans had hacked into civilian corporate systems to learn about military equipment. The attack began on a night with no moons. But the humans did not attack the base itself. Instead, they cut 3 small cables that provided power to the perimeter sensors. The cuts were made to look like equipment failure, not sabotage. Next, they used the enemy's own communication system to send false messages. Supply convoys were delayed. Guard rotations were changed. Medical supplies were rerouted to the wrong locations. Then came the psychological operations. The humans had learned that hegemony soldiers feared a creature from their homeworld mythology, the Shadow Stalker, a beast that hunted in darkness. Using the base's internal speakers, they began playing sounds at frequencies that resembled the stalker's call. The sounds were too quiet for conscious detection, but loud enough to create unease. They also discovered that Warlord Krax had lost his father in a mining accident years ago. During his evening call with his mate, the humans interrupted the transmission with audio of mining equipment and cave-ins. Just for a few seconds, then the normal call resumed. "Why are you tormenting them?" Zethkar asked Admiral Chen. "We are not tormenting them," she replied calmly. "We are making them ineffective." By the third night, the enemy base was in chaos. Soldiers reported equipment failures that technical teams could not find. Guard posts were abandoned when nervous sentries heard strange sounds in the darkness. The command staff was exhausted from dealing with constant communication problems. That was when the humans struck. But they did not attack with weapons. Instead, they projected massive holograms around the base. Images of shadow stalkers moving through the darkness. The enemy soldiers panicked and fired at illusions, revealing their positions and wasting ammunition. While the hegemony forces were distracted, human infiltration teams entered the base through maintenance tunnels that the humans had spent 2 weeks mapping. They did not kill anyone. Instead, they planted small devices throughout the facility. The devices activated at dawn. Every screen in the base displayed the same message: "Your families want you to come home. This war serves only your leaders, not your people." The message was accompanied by actual recordings. Voice messages from the soldiers' mates and offspring, asking them to abandon the fight and return safely. The humans had somehow obtained these personal communications. Zethkar watched in amazement as enemy soldiers began to lay down their weapons. Within 3 hours, over half the base had surrendered. Warlord Krax tried to maintain order, but his troops were no longer listening to him. The few who remained loyal retreated to the central command bunker. The humans did not assault this position. Instead, they waited. By evening, the bunker's power failed. Exactly as the humans had predicted. The backup systems activated, but everyone knew they would only last 4 hours and 12 minutes. In the darkness, with strange sounds echoing through the corridors and their families begging them to surrender, the remaining defenders lost their will to fight. Warlord Krax was the last to give up. He walked out of the bunker alone, carrying a white cloth. "I do not understand," he said to Admiral Chen. "You did not defeat us. You made us defeat ourselves." "Yes," she replied simply. The entire operation had taken 3 weeks. Not a single human soldier had been killed. Only 12 enemy soldiers had died, and those were accidents during the panic. That night, Zethkar found himself staring at the human ships docked in the orbital station. They still looked ordinary and unimpressive. But now, he knew they contained something he had never seen before. "Admiral Chen," he said when she passed by, "may I ask you a question?" "Of course." "How did you get those family recordings? How did you know about Warlord Krax's father?" She paused and looked at him with those strange human eyes. "We asked." "Asked who?" "Everyone," she said. "You would be surprised how much people will tell you if you just ask the right questions in the right way." Zethkar watched her walk away and felt something he had never experienced before. Not fear exactly, but something close to it. A sense that he was dealing with creatures who thought about warfare in ways that his military training had never prepared him for. The humans did not fight battles. They fought minds. And they were very, very good at it. 3 months into the war, Zethkar began to notice patterns that made him uncomfortable. The humans never seemed surprised by anything. When hegemony forces used new weapons, the humans already knew how to counter them. When enemy commanders changed tactics, the humans were ready with responses. It was as if they could see the future. "How do you always know what they will do?" Zethkar asked Admiral Chen, after another successful operation. We do not know what they will do, she replied. We know what they can do. There is a difference. The Admiral led him to a secure briefing room where walls were covered with charts and diagrams. But these were not normal military maps. They showed cultural connections, trade relationships, and social networks across the entire galaxy. We have been studying galactic civilization for 50 years, Admiral Chen explained. Every species, every government, every major corporation. We know how they think, how they make decisions, how they respond to pressure. Zethkar studied the charts. Red lines connected hegemony worlds to various corporations and trading partners. Blue lines showed cultural exchanges and educational programs. Green lines indicated technological dependencies. You have been planning this war for 50 years? No, Admiral Chen said. We have been preparing for every possible war for 50 years. The hegemony conflict is just one scenario we considered. She pointed to a section of the chart showing human cultural exports. 20 years ago, we introduced human entertainment to hegemony worlds. Their children grew up watching our stories, playing our games, listening to our music. Zethkar saw thousands of connections. Human movies were popular on 63 different worlds. Human food had become fashionable on dozens more. Human technology was integrated into communication systems across multiple star systems. You invaded them without weapons, he said quietly. We shared our culture. Admiral Chen corrected. They welcomed it. But yes, cultural influence is a form of power. She led him to another section of the room. Here, the displays showed current operations across all war zones. Zethkar was shocked by what he saw. On Hegemony Homeworld, the humans were not attacking military targets. Instead, they were disrupting the entertainment networks that distributed human content. Children who had grown up watching human cartoons suddenly found their favorite shows replaced with war propaganda. The psychological impact was devastating. On industrial worlds, the humans were causing accidents in factories that produced components for human technology. Suddenly, communication devices and transportation systems began failing across hegemony space. You made them dependent on you, then took it away, Zethkar said. We created vulnerabilities. Admiral Chen agreed. Now, we are exploiting them. The most disturbing operation was happening on Kepler 78c, a hegemony stronghold that had refused all surrender demands. The humans were not attacking it directly. Instead, they were conducting what they called atmospheric adjustment. Tiny drones, invisible to normal sensors, were releasing chemicals into the air processing systems. The chemicals were not lethal. They were worse. They caused insomnia, anxiety, and mild hallucinations. You are driving them insane, Zethkar accused. We are reducing their combat effectiveness, Admiral Chen replied calmly. Sleep deprivation decreases reaction time by 40%. Anxiety reduces decision-making ability. Hallucinations create distrust between soldiers. IF. Zethkar watched the monitoring displays. Enemy soldiers on Kepler 78c were becoming paranoid and suspicious. They were fighting among themselves instead of preparing for battle. Command structure was breaking down as officers questioned each other's loyalty. How long will you continue this? Until they surrender, or until they are no longer capable of military action. The humans had also discovered something that horrified Zethkar. They had hacked into the personal databases of every hegemony military officer. They knew about secret affairs, hidden debts, family scandals, and private fears. This information was being used systematically. Officers who had gambling addictions received anonymous messages about their debts. Those with secret relationships found evidence of their affairs mysteriously delivered to their mates. Commanders with sick relatives suddenly discovered that medical supplies were unavailable. You are destroying their personal lives, Zethkar said. We are removing their ability to focus on military objectives, Admiral Chen explained. A soldier who is worried about his family cannot concentrate on fighting. But the worst discovery came when Zethkar accessed the human cultural database. He wanted to understand how they had developed such effective psychological warfare techniques. What he found made his mandibles click in horror. The database contained detailed studies of every major conflict in human history. But these were not normal historical records. They were analyses of psychological warfare methods, cultural manipulation techniques, and social control systems. Humans had been practicing these methods on each other for thousands of years. Their own civil wars had been laboratories for developing ways to break enemy morale. Their corporate competitions had taught them how to manipulate consumer behavior. Their political systems had shown them how to control information and shape public opinion. Every technique they were using against the hegemony had first been tested on other humans. "You learn to fight this way by fighting yourselves," Zethkar said when he confronted Admiral Chen with this information. "Yes," she said without shame. "Humans have always been excellent at warfare. We simply had to learn to apply our skills to non-human opponents. But why? Why develop such terrible methods?" Admiral Chen was quiet for a long moment. When she spoke, her voice was softer than usual. "On our homeworld, we had many different groups of humans. Different cultures, different beliefs, different ways of life. For most of our history, these groups fought each other. We learned that physical violence was wasteful and inefficient." She pulled up images of human cities, vast places with millions of inhabitants living peacefully together. "So, we developed better methods. Ways to resolve conflicts without destroying everything. Ways to change minds instead of breaking bodies. Ways to win completely without losing our civilization." "You perfected psychological warfare to stop killing each other?" "Yes. And then we discovered that the same methods work on everyone else." Zethkar left the briefing room feeling sick. The humans had not developed their terrible abilities to conquer other species. They had developed them to survive their own nature. And now they were using those skills to end the war as quickly and efficiently as possible. He realized that the hegemony had never had a chance. They were fighting an enemy that had spent millennia learning how to destroy opponents without firing a shot. The humans did not just win battles. They made it impossible for their enemies to continue fighting. That night, Zethkar dreamed of human cities filled with billions of creatures who had learned to wage war inside each other's minds. He woke up wondering what it would be like to live among beings who could manipulate thoughts and emotions as easily as they breathed. For the first time in his military career, Zethkar was genuinely afraid. Not of losing the war. The hegemony was already beaten, even if they did not know it yet. He was afraid of the humans who were helping them win. The ambush happened on a routine patrol near the outer edge of the Proxima system. Lieutenant Sarah Chen, the Admiral's younger sister, was leading a small human team to investigate strange energy readings near an asteroid field. It was a trap. Hegemony forces had been waiting for 3 days, hidden behind carefully positioned rocks and debris. When the human ships entered the kill zone, 15 enemy vessels opened fire simultaneously. Zethkar watched the battle from the command center. The human ships tried to retreat, but they were surrounded. Their shields failed within minutes. One by one, the small vessels were torn apart by concentrated weapons fire. The entire engagement lasted less than 10 minutes. All 5 human ships were destroyed. 37 human soldiers died, including Lieutenant Chen. Zethkar expected the humans to react immediately. In his experience, most species became emotional after losing comrades. They demanded revenge attacks or held memorial ceremonies that lasted for days. The humans did neither. When Admiral Chen received the news about her sister's death, she listened to the report without changing expression. She asked 3 questions about tactical data, then dismissed the messenger. "Admiral," Zethkar said carefully, "I am sorry for your loss." "Thank you," she replied in the same calm voice she always used. "Please prepare the tactical analysis of the engagement. We will need to understand their ambush methods. That was all. No tears, no anger. But something else happened that made Zethkar's skin crawl. The humans stopped talking. Not completely. They continued to give orders and receive reports. They answered direct questions about military matters. But all casual conversation ended. No jokes, no personal stories, no friendly comments between colleagues. The human sections of the ship became silent, except for the sound of machinery and official communications. This lasted for exactly 72 hours. During those 3 days, Zethkar noticed that the humans were working constantly. They barely ate or slept. Teams of analysts were studying every detail of the ambush. Engineers were modifying weapon systems. Intelligence officers were gathering information about the hegemony commander who had planned the trap. Commander Vashtok was his name. A veteran warrior from the hegemony homeworld. He commanded a battle group of 20 ships and had won several victories against other allied forces. The attack on Lieutenant Chen's team was his latest success. The humans learned everything about him. His military record, his family history, his personal habits. They discovered that he had 3 offspring and a mate on the homeworld. They learned about his father's service in an ancient war and his grandfather's role in expanding hegemony territory. They also learned about his species' cultural values. Hegemony society was built around genetic legacy. A warrior's greatest achievement was ensuring that his bloodline would be remembered for generations. On the 4th day, the humans began speaking again. But they were different now. Their voices were still calm and professional, but Zethkar sensed something underneath that made him uncomfortable. "We have developed a response plan for the ambush situation," Admiral Chen announced during the morning briefing. The plan was unlike anything Zethkar had seen before. The humans were not just targeting Commander Vashtok and his battle group. They were targeting his entire genetic line. First, they would destroy his ships in battle, but they would make sure he survived to see what came next. Next, they would attack his homeworld. Not the military installations, but the civilian infrastructure that supported his family's agricultural holdings. They would introduce an engineered plant disease that would destroy crops for the next 50 years. Then they would target the cultural monuments dedicated to his ancestors. Using precise orbital strikes, they would erase every statue, every memorial, every record of his family's achievements. Finally, they would corrupt the genetic databases that recorded his bloodline. Future generations would have no proof that his family had ever existed. "You want to erase him from history," Zethkar said. "Yes," Admiral Chen replied simply. "But why? Killing him would end the threat. Killing him would make him a martyr. His offspring would seek revenge. Other commanders would honor his memory. This way, there will be nothing left to avenge or remember." The plan took 6 months to implement. The humans worked with the patience of creatures who measured time in geological ages. They carefully positioned ships and resources. They developed the crop disease in hidden laboratories. They identified every monument and database that contained references to Commander Vashtok's family. During this time, they also conducted a psychological warfare campaign against the commander himself. Using intercepted communications, they learned that he was proud of his military heritage. So the humans began sending him anonymous messages containing fabricated evidence that his ancestors had been cowards and traitors. They discovered that he loved his offspring deeply, so they arranged for him to receive false reports suggesting that his children were ashamed of his military service and wanted him to surrender. They learned that he feared being forgotten after death. So they began rumors among his own troops that he was planning to retreat from battle and abandon his duties. Commander Vashtok began making mistakes. His once precise tactical decisions became erratic. His crews lost confidence in his leadership. His battle group became less effective with each engagement. The final confrontation came near the rings of Saturn. Commander Vashtok had gathered his remaining ships for what he thought would be a glorious last stand. The humans met him with overwhelming force, but they did not simply destroy his ships. Instead, they disabled them one by one, forcing the crews to abandon their vessels. Commander Vostok watched helplessly as his fleet was systematically dismantled. When only his command ship remained, the humans offered him surrender terms. He could live, but he would have to watch everything else be destroyed. He accepted. Over the following months, the humans carried out every part of their plan. The crop disease was released on his homeworld. The monuments were destroyed. The databases were corrupted. Commander Vostok was kept alive in a comfortable prison, where he received regular reports about the systematic erasure of his family's legacy. Zethkar visited him once, near the end. "Why did they do this?" the broken hegemony commander asked. "I killed 37 of their soldiers, but they have destroyed my entire civilization." Zethkar had no answer. He was beginning to understand that humans did not seek proportional revenge. When they grieved, they did not just want their enemies dead. They wanted their enemies to have never existed at all. "What kind of creatures are they?" Commander Vostok whispered. Zethkar left without answering. But he was asking himself the same question. The humans had shown him their true nature. When they loved something and lost it, they became something beyond rational understanding. They became forces of comprehensive destruction that would not stop until every trace of their enemy was gone. And they did it all with the same calm, professional demeanor they used for routine military operations. That night, Zethkar realized he had never seen the humans truly angry. He had only seen them grieve. And their grief was more terrifying than any rage he had ever witnessed. He began to wonder what would happen if someone ever made the humans genuinely furious. He hoped he would never find out. The war ended on a Tuesday, not with a final battle or dramatic surrender, but with a simple message broadcast across all hegemony communication networks. The war is over. Return to your homes. Your leaders have abandoned you. 9. 9. 9. Within 48 hours, hegemony forces throughout the galaxy began laying down their weapons, not because they had been defeated in battle, but because they had lost the will to continue fighting. Zethkar stood in the command center, watching reports flood in from dozens of star systems. Enemy ships were powering down their weapons and requesting safe passage home. Military installations were being abandoned. Entire armies were deserting their posts. "How?" General Vexthor asked Admiral Chen. "How did you accomplish this?" "We removed their reasons for fighting," she replied calmly. The post-war briefings revealed the true scope of what the humans had accomplished. For 6 months, they had been systematically destroying the hegemony's social structure from within. They had identified the key individuals who held their society together, not just military leaders, but cultural figures, religious authorities, and family patriarchs. One by one, these people had been discredited, corrupted, or eliminated. They had introduced economic chaos by manipulating the currency systems that connected hegemony worlds. They had created food shortages by attacking agricultural distribution networks. They had spread doubt and fear by controlling information flows. Most importantly, they had convinced ordinary hegemony citizens that their government was leading them toward extinction. "We did not conquer them," Admiral Chen explained to the Allied commanders. "We convinced them to conquer themselves." But Zethkar was no longer listening to the tactical discussions. Something Admiral Chen had said earlier was bothering him. During the briefing, she had mentioned that human forces were being reassigned to other priority zones. "What other priority zones?" he asked her privately after the meeting. Admiral Chen looked at him for a long moment, as if deciding how much to reveal. "Come with me," she said finally. She led him to a secure section of the ship that Zethkar had never seen before. His security clearance, which had been sufficient for all military operations, was not high enough for this area. Admiral Chen had to provide special authorization for his entry. The chamber beyond the security doors was enormous. Walls were covered with displays showing star charts, species profiles, and strategic analyses. But these were not focused on the hegemony. They covered the entire galaxy. Every known species had detailed files. Every government had structural analyses. Every military force had capability assessments. The humans had been studying everyone, not just their enemies. We have been preparing for this moment for over 200 years, Admiral Chen said quietly. What moment? First contact with galactic civilization. She led him to a section focused on the Velthari. Zethkar was shocked to see detailed information about his own people. Their psychology, their technology, their military capabilities, their cultural weaknesses. You have been studying us too. Of course, we study everyone. The files contained information that should have been classified beyond any security level. Human agents had infiltrated Velthari society decades ago. They knew about secret weapons projects, political conspiracies, and military strategies that even Zethkar was not aware of. Why? He asked. Because knowledge is survival, Admiral Chen replied. In a galaxy filled with unknown species, information is the only reliable defense. She showed him similar files for dozens of other races. The humans knew how to defeat every major civilization in the galaxy. They had identified economic vulnerabilities, psychological pressure points, and technological dependencies for each species. The hegemony war was not a conflict we joined, Admiral Chen continued. It was a test of our systems. A test? We needed to see if our methods would work on non-human opponents. The hegemony provided an excellent opportunity to field test our capabilities. Zethkar felt cold despite the ship's comfortable temperature. We used this war to prepare for larger threats. The hegemony was never a real danger to human space. They were too far away and too weak. But they were similar enough to other species that defeating them would teach us valuable lessons. Admiral Chen activated another display. This one showed long-range sensor data from the galaxy's outer rim. Unknown ships were moving in patterns that suggested advanced military organization. We have detected signs of civilizations beyond our current knowledge. Some appear to be significantly more powerful than anything we have encountered so far. When we eventually make contact with them, we will need to be ready. Ready for what? For the possibility that they might view humans as a threat to be eliminated. Zethkar stared at the sensor data. The implications were staggering. You have been preparing for a war that has not happened yet against an enemy you have never met? We have been preparing for every war that might happen against every enemy we might meet, Admiral Chen corrected. It is what humans do. She led him to the final section of the chamber. Here, the displays showed something that made Zethkar's mandibles click in horror. Human historical records. But not the sanitized versions that most species were allowed to see. These were the complete files, showing the full scope of human violence throughout their history. Wars that had killed millions. Weapons that could destroy entire planets. Conflicts that had lasted for generations and left entire continents uninhabitable. This is what we were, Admiral Chen said quietly, before we learned to control ourselves. The records showed how humans had gradually developed more sophisticated methods of warfare, how they had learned to win conflicts without destroying everything, how they had perfected the art of making enemies surrender rather than forcing them to fight to extinction. We realized that total destruction was wasteful, she continued. It was much more efficient to break our enemy's will to fight. So we developed the methods you have seen us use. Against other humans? First against other humans. Then we adapted them for use against anyone who might threaten us. Zethkar understood now. The humans had not become peaceful creatures who avoided violence. They had become something far more dangerous. Creatures who had learned to wage war so effectively that most conflicts ended before any real fighting began. Every species in the galaxy thinks differently, Admiral Chen said. But all thinking follows certain patterns. Once you understand those patterns, you can predict behavior. And once you can predict behavior, you can control it. She showed him training programs that human children completed as part of their basic education. Psychology, sociology, game theory, strategic thinking. Every human citizen was taught to understand how other minds worked. You have turned your entire species into soldiers, Zethkar realized. No, Admiral Chen said. We have turned our entire species into survivors. The final revelation came when Admiral Chen showed him the human contingency plans. There were thousands of them, covering every possible threat scenario. Alien invasion, galactic civil war, resource scarcity, technological disasters, even scenarios involving the complete breakdown of interstellar civilization. For every possible future, the humans had a plan. And for every possible enemy, they had a method of victory that did not require them to become extinct in the process. We learned from our own history, Admiral Chen explained. We saw what happened when humans fought each other without restraint. We nearly destroyed our own species multiple times. So, we developed better ways to fight. Ways that ensure you always win. Ways that ensure we always survive. Zethkar left the briefing chamber in a daze. He now understood what made the humans so terrifying in warfare. They did not fight to conquer, or to gain glory, or to prove their strength. They fought to survive, and they had learned to do it with scientific precision. Every other species in the galaxy fought wars. Humans fought extinction events, and they approached each conflict with the assumption that failure meant the complete annihilation of their people. That night, Zethkar sat in his quarters and thought about the future. The humans were allies now, but he knew that could change. Political situations always changed eventually. When that happened, when humans decided that other species posed a threat to their survival, what would they do? Zethkar had seen their capabilities. He knew they could make any enemy surrender without firing a shot. He knew they could destroy civilizations from within. He knew they could erase entire cultures from history. And he knew they would do all of this with the same calm, professional demeanor they used for routine operations. The humans did not hate their enemies. They simply made it impossible for their enemies to continue existing as threats. For the first time since the war began, Zethkar truly understood what the word dread meant. It was not fear of death or defeat. It was the realization that you were facing creatures who could make you disappear completely, not just your body, but your memory, your culture, your very existence. The humans had shown him that there were fates worse than losing a war. There was losing the war so completely that future generations would never know you had ever fought at all.